Hey, I'm Chris Zepp from Make Everything, and today I'm going to show you how making soft platens for your 2x72 grinder will absolutely change the way you use it. Check it out. All right, so this grinder in particular, this is from Brodbeck Ironworks. It's got a really cool feature. On the platen, it has actually a removable plate. This is an 1/8 inch thick piece of steel. It's 2 inches wide for the 2-inch belt. Now, a lot of 2x72 grinders have a removable platen, so if yours doesn't have a removable plate like this, you could just make a couple of platens. So this one, you take off with a couple of screws, and then once you've got it off, you can change it out. So what I'm gonna do, just to make my life a little bit easier, instead of having to take away the whole platen, because I like to get my platen aligned with my wheels a certain way, I'm gonna just take out the screws and thread the new piece of steel that we're gonna make. This is just a piece of 1/8 inch by 2 inch flat stock. I even think this came from Home Depot. This isn't even from like the metal supply. It's hot rolled, and I'm just gonna slice this up with the bandsaw. All right, so I know that the holes in this one are good, and these are just 1/4 20, so I'm gonna use a transfer punch. If you're not familiar with a transfer punch, what a transfer punch is it's a accurately sized rod with a point in the center of it. So if I find the right one, now this is a number 7 hole, and I know I don't have a number 7 center punch, but if I can get the closest I can to the threaded hole, I think that'll be fine. There we go. So I'm just going to line these up and tap these in so I can get an accurate hole so I can drill for this. So I'm drilling these out with a number 7 drill bit, and this is the proper drill for a 1/4 20 hole. And what's nice, on my drill press, I've got this Armor Tool quick clamp, which is awesome. It's self-adjusting, and it'll just keep me a little bit safer when I do my drilling. So what I usually like to do is get myself lined up with where my hole's gonna be, and then use my drill bit to hold down my material, clamp it with that, and I'm good to go. All right, so with these number 7 holes drilled, this is only 1/8 inch thick, so I'm just going to use a drill to tap these, but still throw a little bit of tapping oil on there. Before I actually glue the material onto these, I just want to make sure that my threaded holes line up. So screw in my little Allen key screws. And what's nice, these screws being so short, it's real quick to get this thing set back up. And on this grinder in particular, there's a good amount of clearance in the holes. So if I'm off by a little bit, I still should be able to tighten these up and get these things on there. All right, now we're just going to use some contact cement to glue these down. Now the proper way to use contact cement is to put it on thin, let it dry, put it on both sides, let it dry on both sides, and then stick them together. You don't get it all wet and then just stick the other piece to it. That's not how this stuff works. I see a lot of people using this stuff incorrectly. Pretty much the same thing goes for spray glue too. You want to let it tack up. So we're going to put some contact cement on this. Push this to the side. Put a little bit on the back of our leather. Oh, by the way, I cleaned these with acetone before I put this glue on there because I didn't want any of the grease or oil that might have been on there to stop the way this glue was going to stick. So. All right. Now we want to let that dry until it's not shiny anymore. All right, so my glue is properly set up. Now we can just stick this on there. That's like a pretty instant bond once you let the glue set up a little bit. Now, the other thing you got to remember too is there's going to be constant pressure from the belt. So let's get these over on the grinder, and you can see the effect that you get out of these soft platens. All right, so I've got the regular hard platen back on here, and I've got a piece of steel. This is just some 1/4 inch mild steel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just flatten this up. This is an 80 grit belt, and I'm going to grind in like just some flat bevels, and then I'm going to show you the way the leather platen and the felt platen affect those bevels once they're ground. So we'll get started by just cleaning this up. I'm going to use the dust collector so I don't breathe all this in. Okay, so these are a couple of grinds that I did, and they're not great. And one of the things that I struggle with is freehand grinding. So I just did a couple of straight grinds. Some of them have some pretty typical kind of knife making features, where this one has a couple different attack angles. This one has a pretty bad sweep in it. This one's pretty much straight, but you can see this kind of crooked plunge line. I just want to show you what changing the belt and the platen is going to do. So the first thing we're going to do is just change the belt, and we're going to switch over to a brand new 220 grit J-Flex belt. Now a J weight belt is a lightweight sanding belt. You can see how flexible this is. They're super lightweight, and as opposed to one of the stiffer belts, this thing doesn't bend or twist at all. This is also an 80 grit belt, but still. So switching over to a J-Flex is important when you're using the flat platens. Now, let's get this on there, and we're going to start with the hard platen with the 220, and I'll show you the differences between the three. Now, one of the key things with this is using a variable speed grinder. Now, this is a Brodbeck Ironworks 2x72, like I had said earlier, and this thing is great and has a VFD on it. This has a 2 horsepower VFD. We're going to turn this down to about 30%. Check my tracking. And I'm only going to do one of these, so I'm going to pick this one, and I'm just going to kind of grind that up, and then we'll do the other ones, and you'll see. So bringing that up, it gives me a nice uniform edge, keeps the plunge line nice and sharp, but I have to control that plunge line still. So if you're a little wobbly with your grind, it can be hard to just use a hard platen to make that plunge line nice and straight and crisp. I would like to try and straighten it out with this, but I don't think I'm going to be able to. So again, nice and crisp on the plunge line, and it gives me some nice uniform grind lines. Let's move over to one of the soft platens, and you can see what that does. So we've got the leather belt, the leather backing on here now. And I'm gonna just do a little bit of grinding on this. You can see how it changes the way that bevel looks. Again, I'm at 30%. You can see how soft that grind comes out. And I'm really able to push in, and it's gonna soften up this plunge line a lot too. So there's actually even less scratch marks seen over here than there was with just the straight 220, and I'm softening up that plunge line just a little bit. It's going to help correct any waviness that you might have in your grind by having that little bit of give. You can actually turn your grinder up a little bit when using the leather because it does strain the motor a lot. You get a really nice soft plunge line, and it's very forgiving. I'm kind of wobbling this thing, and I'm not getting any of those sharp divots, and I'm able to chase that plunge line around. And the feel of this is a lot smoother than the feel of the just 220 on the hard platen. Let's switch over to the felt. Now the felt platen is obviously even softer than the leather, and we're going to go over to this one, which has a nice sharp plunge line. And you can see the way the felt is going to affect that. Now you can really lean into the felt. You can see how immediately it softens that up. Now what else is happening is it's also acting as like a micro slack felt. So there's just a little bit of give in that felt that you can see as I'm pushing into the corner here. And that little bit of slack can really help even out grinds if there's any issues. And I can also totally soften this plunge line by rolling this belt just a little bit, rolling the piece into the belt. Can totally soften up that plunge line, but also leave a nice uniform grind finish. And I can clean up my ricasso by hanging this over the edge a little bit and diving into it. That nice soft ricasso over there, it'll really just blend that out and get it nice. A nice soft ricasso there, nice soft grind. All right, that about does it for this video. Soft platens like the felt and the leather can really expand the way you use your grinder, and this isn't exclusive for a 2x72. I happen to really like it from a knife making perspective and just a general fabrication perspective. You can really get great finishes, stuff that you wouldn't normally achieve with a hard backing when you use these soft backs like this. But you could apply this to, you know, a larger belt grinder or a smaller belt grinder, whatever you have. And this particular grinder, the Brodbeck Ironworks one, has this nice removable platen system, and I encourage you to check this grinder out. This thing is amazing. It tilts, it's variable speed, it's really, really stout and well made, and it's made by, you know, two young guys that are trying to make a tool that's going to last, and I really support them, and they support me, so check them out. There'll be links down below. The knife making applications for this are definitely kind of the highlight, but I want to see the way other people use this. So if you do this to your grinder, tag me on Instagram at MakeEverythingShop. Make some different platens, try out different materials. I have tried a rubber one, but it melted under the friction. So I would stay away from rubber and go with something that's not going to totally fall apart. The leather and the felt so far I found work really well. I'll put links to where you can get this stuff in the description as well. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with friends. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more content. I also have a ton of knife making stuff coming soon, and that'll really allow you to see the capabilities of this stuff from a knife making perspective. So stay tuned for that. Again, follow me on Instagram at MakeEverythingShop if you want to see what I do behind the scenes. I am Chris Zett from Make Everything. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope to see you on the next video. Thanks.